Meridians are SI for the semester, and there's been some updates in the SI program on the way that they're trying to share or explain to students what the program's about and why it's valuable. So you'll find Meridian's contact information on the syllabus. Her email is at the top of the syllabus, like right underneath mine. And she's got some information she's going to share with you here. Her email is also in that upper right-hand corner, in33@nau.edu. And that's right, correct? And so I'm going to turn over to her for a moment, but I want to say a few really nice things about her. She's a fantastic student. Usually don't become an SI without being a solid student, but she's also taken this class and got a great grade, got an A, and she's SI'd for me a couple of times. And so she not only has a firm handle on the material and is very familiar with the SI program and how it can work for you, she's also very familiar with the way my crazy brain works and the way I ask or write test questions. So that kind of insight is, I think, super valuable for students to have. What to focus on for the exam, what to study, where to spend your energies brushing up on topics that you're struggling with. Okay? So let me turn it over to Iridian for a minute.
All right, can you hear me? Yes, cool. So my name is Iridian, and yes, and like he said, my email will always be in the top right-hand corner. I just graduated. I got my bachelor's in biomedical sciences this May, so I did graduate. Thank you. So I hope you guys are on the path. I'll be starting the process to apply to medical schools this upcoming year. So I am still going to school. Let's see, what else can I share? What else should I share? So for fun, I like to volunteer at the hospital. more.
Coordination.
Oh, that's a good one. So what do you think those people had to do to get really good at this?
Practice.
Practice. Anything in particular?
Trial and error.
What was that?
Trial and error.
Okay. So, what else?
Perseverance.
There you go. How do you spell that?
Her PER severance.
Blue noun. What else? Okay. Prepared for what? So equipment, right? All right, one more. Dedication, so there. All right, so I want to explain my role in this class before I explain this chart. So you guys have heard of the supplemental instruction program. So basically my job here is to support you guys. I work for you, not necessarily Dr. Keller, although we do work together. My goal here is to help you guys get really good at pathology. This is where this goes, right? Where do you think Dr. Keller's role fits in here? The other side, right? Go in the other option. So I want you guys to try to remember that I am not your teacher, he is, and I am just here to get you really good at pathology. Does that make sense? Okay. So any other questions about the program or my job or what I can or cannot do? No? So pull out your schedules or just bring them up in your head. These 3 days are the days I was thinking about doing sessions. So a session is a 1-hour time slot where you get help from me for the subject matter of the week or prior, or sometimes I'll go over, but I prefer not to. So how do you guys feel about having a session before this class? So Mondays, anytime between like 11, 1 or 2. Raise your hands if you like that idea. Let me remind you that you might have exams before this class, right? Then you'll have me. Okay, so which one of those do you like better? 11 to 12, raise your hands. 12 to 1? 1 to 2? That seems a little bit more popular. Okay. So what about having one in the afternoon, on Monday afternoons? Do you like that idea? Okay, what works best? I know that most classes end around 5, right? So like 5 to 6? Something like that, 6, okay. So let me see hands for 5 to 6. And okay, 6 to 7. 5 to 6, okay. What about Tuesdays? Can we say 5 to 6? Yeah, okay. What about Tuesdays? How do you guys feel about those? Yes? Okay, so the thing is, I don't have the time to do it in the afternoon, so it'd have to be during the day. So I was thinking like 4 to 5 or earlier if you wanted to. So 4 to 5 is the latest. Does that work for anybody? Tuesdays 4 to 5? Does anybody have any breaks earlier in the day? Like,
8 to 9.
I guess we'll stick to these. Oh, wait, someone say 8 to 9. I love early morning sessions.
Oh, I was joking.
So like 8 to 9 will work for you?
It does work, but I was joking.
What about 11 to 12? Okay, so another question. Who would actually come on Tuesdays 11 to 12?
Liars.
What about 12 to 1? Let's say
it's always a struggle because we got to accommodate 100 schedules plus one additional one, and then we have to superimpose a room that'll fit, maybe not all 100, but 20 to 40. And rooms are at a premium on this campus, if you haven't noticed. So, maybe almost as difficult to get a room as to get an apartment. I don't know, you guys tell me, but it sounds like there's not much in town. Okay. So we're gonna transition into a little mini lecture to get us started in the remaining time that we have. And we're going to reintroduce this concept, or just kind of reinforce this concept that I really want you to study in groups. In the SI session, you're going to build some camaraderie there. You're going to, be going to it probably with some of the same people, because eventually your schedules are going to sort of align where you end up going on, Mondays from 1 to 2, or Mondays from 5 to 6, or Fridays from 6 to 7 p.m. I just made that up. That was my attempt at a joke. The 8 a.m. was funnier. But those people that show up during those times, yeah, you didn't even know.
Space now.
You're
Sorry.
spacing. That's honesty, I love that.
I'm tired.
So, the study groups and the SI times are really, really important. So this is my plea. This is my picture, my kids like to see, of me requesting, pleading with you to study in groups and go to these SI sessions, because I think you're going to find them very, very helpful. If you can only attend one a week, I think it'll be better than none. And so I would work hard to try to move some things around. And it would be better to study maybe a little bit too much in the beginning, and then if you find that this class is so easy that you don't really need all that extra help, then maybe you back off at that point. But I don't usually see that's the case. Usually it's the opposite. Students come mid-semester saying, I'm struggling, what else could I be doing? And guess what one of my first things is going to be? My first question, what else could I be doing to be doing better in this class? So are you going to an SI session? And a lot of times students will say, well, you know what, it doesn't fit my schedule. So, well, I would try to move some things around. You don't necessarily need to do that probably for every class, but this is probably going to be one of your more challenging classes. Okay. The topics that I want us to cover right now are, I want you to turn to your neighbor and discuss, one person describe a definition around pathology, and the second person describe a definition around epidemiology. Right off the bat, some $50 words that you can write home about. You guys all hear that? Can you say that one more time a little louder? Study of how a disease attacks the body
and the systems.
and the systems.
Causes damage to a a cell can eventually cause death.
Okay, it causes damage to a cell and may even cause death. Maybe I've kind of ad-libbed a little bit there. Okay, I like that. Anything else that you'd add to pathology? You guys are going with that one? That's answer A on the exam, huh? So, pathology literally translates to the study of suffering, okay, or the study of disease. And it definitely involves all the things that, what was your name?
Timo.
Timo. All the things that Timo described. Okay, it may be at the cellular level. It may influence an organ or a system. And it very likely is going to cause some type of damage, potentially death to the cell, maybe even to the organ or the system, and it could possibly cause death to the organism or the individual. Now, what about epidemiology? It's a bigger word, more challenging. The study of disease occurrence and outbreak and distribution. Is that what you said? That's really good. Anything else? A shorter definition, but that's absolutely correct, is basically the study of illnesses within a population. It may be how illnesses spread or diseases spread. It involves a lot of statistical analyses of where things are, where do they come from, where are they going. Right now, in the news, one of our most interesting diseases that we're paying attention to epidemiologically is this Zika virus, right? And so we're paying attention to how did it get here, where is it from, how is it transmitted, where is it going, okay? So that's epidemiology, which is slightly different than pathology, which is the study of the disease and how it influences the organism. But they're very much related. What I want you to do next week, because we have the week off, you're going to have a little bit of take-home, you're going to have SI, and what I would really love to see is an extension of this lecture in SI when you start thinking about things. I would like for you to write down 5 of your most favorite diseases, okay? And then in SI, and Iridian's seen us do this before, she's going to take a poll and have you share what those diseases are. And she's going to help you identify which one of them we're going to cover this semester and which ones that we're just not going to have time for. So if everybody shared 5 diseases, there may be somewhere, probably some redundancies, but there might be between 300 and 400 unique diseases that you guys come up with. There's 100 of them, okay? And this is a general pathology class, so do you think we're going to have time to cover every single one? No. The whole point is to get through the major systems and help you create an interest for the study of these different diseases. And another way to say this, when people ask us, so what do you do for a living? Well, I'm a teacher. So, well, what do you teach? Well, I teach about when bad things happen to the body. Right? That's pathology, when stuff goes wrong. Okay? So it's A&P gone wild kind of a thing. Not a good movie series, but it's probably true, right? It's really when the physiology is disrupted and things go south. And so the next part of your homework in writing down these 5 diseases is I want you to identify the major organ system that was affected. You're gonna have to pull from your anatomy and physiology days. Okay? And let's say, for example, you think of glioblastoma. A glioblastoma is a cancer of glioma cells in the brain. Okay, so glioblastoma is a very dangerous type of brain cancer. It's very aggressive. Patients usually have a very short lifespan after they're diagnosed with glioblastoma. We're going to cover cancer in this class, but we're not going to cover glioblastoma. And so the organ system that would be affected in that example would be the central nervous system. Because the glioblastoma can actually migrate throughout the central nervous system, either the brain, frontal cortex, or anywhere within the cranium, or it can actually head down into the spinal cord. And you know the spinal cord and the brain are part of the central nervous system, so that's where that glioblastoma would be. There are people that do only research on glioblastomas. There are actually surgeons that focus heavily on glioblastomas. And I picked glioblastoma because when we first found out that my mom had cancer, she had a tumor in the right parietal occipital lobe, which was back here, and she was having some vision issues, and they thought it was a glioblastoma, and we actually thought we had like weeks to months. Well, the neurosurgeon pulled it out, and they ran pathology, and it came back as lung epithelium. And if you know anything about a glioblastoma, you would jump up and down because a glioblastoma is a primary tumor. It doesn't metastasize from anywhere else. So because it came from the lung, we were celebrating that she had lung cancer. Isn't that kind of weird? But we knew that the reason there was a positive story there is that glioblastoma, it was not a glioblastoma, it's actually a primary lesion from the right bronchi. So we're not going to cover glioblastoma. We'll cover a little bit of lung cancer. And it's a type of lung cancer, two big types of lung cancer, right? The smoking kind and the non-smoking kind. So mom's a non-smoker, and the non-smokers get a non-small cell type of cancer. And it was heavily metastatic and it went to the brain. We were fortunate that we caught it early. So we're going to cover lots of things like this in the semester. Although we don't get into glioblastomas, if I have some time, I might put in a little bit there because that's what we've been focusing a lot of. My family medical history has been focusing a lot on that. But all of you have been impacted in some way, shape, or form by a disease in your family. Okay? Whether it's asthma, which is not really that big of a deal when you start thinking about comparison to brain cancer. Okay? Maybe it's multiple sclerosis, right? Maybe it's Crohn's disease. Maybe it's allergies. We'll talk a lot about allergies. So I want you to go through this exercise next week because you kind of have a week off from me. But I think it would be interesting just to kind of see what the experiences are within your own world and maybe some of the reasons of why you picked this class to take. Is there a question? No? Okay, so pathology. We're kind of starting to ramp up a little bit in the remaining time that we have. Pathology, there's four big aspects. Four big aspects. This looks like a great multiple choice question, doesn't it? That was kind of a hint. So if you have a highlighter, I would highlight. If you don't, maybe borrow one. If you have different colored pens, write in like 6 different colors right here. So it has an etiology. The etiology is going to be the study of the origination or the causation. It comes from the Greek word that means giving a reason for. So pathology, if you're studying a disease, you're going to first talk about the etiology. Where did it come from? What was the origin? Was it a glioblastoma where it originated with a mutated glial cell? Or did it come as a secondary metastasized lesion from somewhere else in the body? And in mom's case, it was the latter of the two. Well, then it has a pathogenesis, a beginning, genesis, a beginning of the disease. Well, wait a second, I thought that was etiology or origination. No. The pathology or the pathogenesis is the mechanism which usually is described in terms of acute or chronic or recurrent. So it's talking about a mechanistic pathway of what happened. So it comes from the Greek word meaning diseased or disease beginning. Pathogenesis, disease beginning or disease beginning. And then we start seeing a third aspect, which we refer to as morphological alterations. We see this at the gross level as well as the microscopic level. So grossly, we're going to see that the organ might have a different appearance. And we'll see some of those pictures throughout the semester. Microscopically, when we look at the histology, we can actually appreciate that the normal, say, epithelium of the lung has changed. It no longer looks like native lung epithelium. It looks different. And then lastly, with pathology or the study of a disease, we see that there is some sort of clinical significance. So that clinical significance means that something is going to be impacted. Lung function will go down. So in the case of my mom, right now we're draining about 300 milliliters of fluid out of her pleural space every day. That's the clinical significance of the lung tumor. And you're like, wow, that's a lot. We have about 2 teaspoons of pleural fluid within the parietal and the visceral pleural, which lines around the lungs. Okay, and mom's tumor is starting to produce extra fluid and it builds up. And that 300, we're actually celebrating because that means that the chemotherapy is working. It's actually down. It's been as high as a liter. And it's down to 300 milliliters. Okay? So the clinical significance of having fluid in that space means that shortness of breath, right? Difficulty sleeping, pain upon inspiration, fatigue. These are all the clinical significance that's associated with a primary lesion in the lung. Okay, so 4 aspects that we're going to see. So what I'm going to introduce, and we'll finish out in 2 weeks, but I'm going to introduce it. I'm going to introduce our first disease example, which is called Barrett's esophagus. And we'll talk more about Barrett in 2 weeks, and you can probably talk about it next week a little bit. And the other thing is, in this class, I will try really hard not to be like, oh crap, I got like 6 minutes left, and go right through the slides. We'll just stop here, we'll pick up where we left off. Okay? Sometimes I get excited and kind of want to get to a nice stopping point, so I might rush a little bit, but I'll try to backtrack it the next time and pick it up. But I want to introduce, so you have a takeaway of what you talked about the first day, right? I hate that. We went through the syllabus, it told us how great he is, how long have you been doing this, right? I want you to actually walk away with something that you're thinking about that relates to a disease. So Barrett esophagus. Barrett esophagus has really 4 main aspects of the disease. Number 1, these patients usually suffer from chronic gastroesophageal reflux disease. Gastroesophageal reflux disease. The abbreviation is GERD, G-E-R-D. Gastro, G-A-S-T-R-O, esophageal, second word, E-S-O-P-H-A-G-E-A-L, reflux disease. Now, secondly, about 10% of those patients with GERD develop Barrett. And thirdly, these are the 4 aspects, thirdly, it's thought that this chronic, over time, prolonged injury of this reflux, right? What's happening in reflux disease? This is heartburn, right? So you have HCl in the stomach, and there's a esophageal sphincter that closes, theoretically. And if that sphincter isn't closed completely, it's circular muscle at the bottom of the esophagus, then you get some backflow up the esophagus, and it causes a little bit of a burning sensation in the food pipe or the esophagus, and that's GERD, that's gastroesophageal reflux disease. If it's left untreated, right, prolonged injury, that's the 3rd aspect, then it leads to the 4th aspect, which is called cellular metaplasia. Cellular metaplasia, M-E-T-A-P-L-A-S-I-A. What in the world does that word mean, Dr. Keller? Cellular metaplasia is from the Greek, which means change in form. So the cell stops looking like a esophageal epithelium, and it starts looking a little bit more like stomach epithelium. Because the stomach epithelium has a protective lining, right, with goblet cells to release mucus so that it can create a coating that will protect it against the hydrochloric acid that it manufactures. And theoretically, that lower esophageal sphincter, the LES, is closed, and so none of that acid backflows into the esophagus. Well, if it does that over time, it starts changing the type of cells that are present. And as it changes the type of cells that are present, it causes this terminology known as cellular metaplasia. So, we got a picture here that's showing where this LES is, this lower esophageal sphincter. This chronic GERD creates a self-injury because it's not used to seeing this irritant. You're going to see this being a theme throughout the semester, is that we get this irritation that causes a potential mutation in the cell, an alteration or a change. 10% of patients develop GERD, or Barrett that have GERD. We don't really understand why. Why it's only 10%. Maybe they're just predisposed genetically to developing this. But the bigger problem is that chronic GERD is a risk factor for developing esophageal adenocarcinoma. Esophageal adenocarcinoma. ESOPHAGEAL. Second word, adenocarcinoma. One word. ADENOCARCINOMA. Now, this adenocarcinoma, this is what it's going to look like. I'm going to show you just a couple of pictures in closing, and we'll back up. I know I skipped a couple of slides. We'll back up in 2 weeks. This is the picture with a scope, with a camera, and you see this white glistening tissue. That's what the esophagus should look like. It's slimy. They put a scope down the esophagus and they can take a picture. Over here, you've lost that sort of slimy, slippery epithelium because of this GERD. This is down about 2 to 3 centimeters above the lower esophageal sphincter. Okay, right up here, right at the level, essentially, of the sternum. And here is an esophageal adenocarcinoma. Down a similar view, right down the center. And this lesion right here is Barrett esophagus that's become, or left untreated. GERD gave rise to Barrett esophagus, and that is manifested in a clinically significant lesion known as esophageal adenocarcinoma. Okay? Throat cancer, essentially. Now, histologically, this is the last slide for today, and then we'll pick it up here. I just want to show you the differences. So, this is microscopic. You just saw macroscopic, because you could actually see it. If you could get your eye down the throat, you could actually see that adenocarcinoma. That was magnified slightly, but still considered gross changes. Microscopically, we get metaplasia. So here over in the green, this is actually stratified squamous, which is what you would expect in the esophagus. Right? You swallow food, it creates abrasion. You want to have stratified squamous, just like on the surface of the skin. Well, what are you noticing? See, green means good, red means bad, right? What do you notice about this epithelium? This is still within the esophagus, just adjacent. What do you see? Goblet cells. What are the goblet cells? Those little white vacuole structures that contain mucus. So this is the pathology that you would see from a lesion that looked like that, and it would come back and you would say, aha, we've got cellular metaplasia. Okay? So in pathology, we try to figure out what was the cause, what's the mechanism, what macroscopic, what microscopic changes do we see, and what's the clinical significance. So we're going to use these tools throughout the semester. We're going to take next week off from lecture. You're going to have SI. You can talk a little bit about Barrett as an example. You can talk about different types of diseases, kind of get to know each other, try to form some study groups, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Okay? My office hours are Monday and Thursday from 12 to 1. My office is in Wetall, the second floor, room 211. It's on the syllabus. Or we can make an appointment if you have class at that time and it doesn't fit in your schedule. Okay? Have a nice Labor Day.